Welcome to a new episode of Theosophical Insights, a podcast by the WFYT, the World Federation of Young Theosophists. We're very pleased to have with us today Linda Oliveira.
Welcome, dear friends. Linda Oliveira is a second-generation Theosophist who joined the Theosophical Society in Australia in 1971 after hearing some talks by the philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti. Later, her degree at the Australian National University focused mainly on psychology and political science. She was the national president of the Theosophical Society in Australia as well as editor of its national magazine, for a total of 16 years during two periods, the second of which was completed in January 2021. Linda was the international vice president of the Theosophical Society from October 2008 until late 2011, serving 2.5 years of this period at NDR, the Society's international headquarters in India, before returning to live in Australia. She has lectured and given study classes for the TS in various countries. Linda holds a strong conviction that a genuine exploration and reflection upon Theosophy, the perennial wisdom, provides to those who are awake and alert the possibility of profound human spiritual transformation. Welcome.
Thank you for that, Svet. Welcome, Linda. So, before we open with our first question to get to know you better and your origins as a theosophist. I just have a very quick question. Have you ever tuned into any of our podcast episodes? And
No, I haven't had the occasion to do that.
I see. All right. I hope you will listen to this one, your very own episode. So, I'm sure with your illustrious career in the TS, and your very, and more than that, your inspiring life, most people within the TS, as well as outside, have heard of you, and um, ha have known you, or at least have heard of you. And we're all very inspired by you. But it would be great to hear from you, um, hear you talk about your own story of how you came in contact with Theosophy and the Theosophical Society, as well as your experiences as a young theosophist.
Okay, so I was born into a theosophical family. Both of my parents were members of the society before I was born. In fact, they were part of a large group of young theosophists at that time, and that's how they met many, many years ago, back in the 1950s. So I was born into a family where my parents were involved. But interestingly, my brother and sister never took to Theosophy, but from a very young age, I guess you could say I took to it like a duck to water. I suppose you could say I was therefore essentially a young theosophist since birth, really. Perhaps on a personal level, I can share a couple of experiences as a child. One is I remember I must have been maybe 8 years old or something like that. I walked out into the garden one evening and there were the most magnificent clouds in the sky, and I had this quite profound moment of conviction that there is some higher power at work behind the world. And the only name I could put to that power at that young age was God. But there was this tremendous feeling of this divine energy there at work. And I was utterly certain of it. There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever. And another thing also is that from a very young age, I'm not quite sure how old, I always had this conviction about the idea of reincarnation. So they are two actual experiences from childhood that were there from a young age. It's not just that my parents were Theosophists before I was born. There was something there. There was a seed, if you like. So that was something. When I was 13 years old, my father was quite an intuitive man. We lived in Canberra, which was the national capital of Australia, and he thought that he wanted to go to Sydney to hear the philosopher J. Krishnamurti speak at the Sydney Town Hall. He had this intuition that he should take me with him. So at that young age, I had the opportunity to do that. And while I can't remember the details of that talk, although I've since discovered that these are actually online, and I will find time at some point to see them again. The effect on me was, it just opened up a whole lot of questions. And it was like it opened up the rest of my life in a way, because there was this, I suppose you call it a mini transformative moment. And all the way home in the car, on the way to Canberra, I kept plying my poor father with question after question about life and theosophy and all these things. And although Krishnaji was no longer, and had not been for a very long time, active in the Theosophical Society, I made up my mind at that time that I wanted to join it. And therefore I joined it at a very young age. So there's that. And when I reflected years and years later on what effect hearing Krishnaji speak at that age had on me, I realized that it planted the seeds in me to always inquire, not necessarily to accept something as it is, but to keep on asking questions. And also the importance of looking at oneself, examining oneself, the conditioning and all of that. So they're two things which I have brought very much to my study of theosophy and involvement with the Theosophical Society more over many years. So there was that. So there are a couple of, some milestones in my younger years in terms of theosophy. But then another interesting story which I'll share is that I had married, and my husband and I had decided we were going to go to Europe, and then we were going to come back to Australia and start a family. But for some reason, it felt wrong to both of us. And instead, we decided to go to the National Convention of the Theosophical Society, which was to be held in Brisbane in Queensland at that time. So we went to that convention, and who should we meet but Joy Mills, who was an absolutely amazing human being. Out of the blue, after a couple of days at the convention, she said to us, "How would you feel about coming to the Crotona Institute in California as scholarship students?" And we thought about it overnight, and I said the next day, well, I really want to finish my degree. I need to do this before I do anything else. So that took another year or so, and then we went to Crotona. I had the great privilege of having 3 full terms there as a scholarship student, and also working for a couple of months in the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America at Wheaton as part of that entire experience. And that was another very formative experience for me as a young theosophist doing that. So I guess I saw some of the theosophical greats at the time speak. So there was Virginia Hansen, who was a tremendous student of the Mahatma Letters to A.P. Sinnott. I met Dora Kunz, I met John Algeo, and various other people who were really quite significant figures in the Theosophical movement at that time. And then the other thing I do want to mention about really my younger experiences with Theosophy was the Manor Centre in Sydney, which I had actually first stayed at as a baby with my parents. They used to go and stay at the Manor. My father took me to stay there when I heard the series of talks by Krishnaji, and my involvement with that has strengthened even further over the years. So I'm very involved in that community, and that's one of the things that I do. So there are some of my formative experiences as a young Theosophist, although I wasn't part of a formal YTs group at that stage because there was nothing around like that at that time in the places where I was.
I think it's a great answer, and thank you for sharing the milestones and the important events in this early part of your involvement with Theosophy. And we often speak about transformative effect that Theosophy produces. And we would like to ask you, how has it worked in your life, in your experience? What is this transformative effect and how does it happen?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's important to consider what do we mean by theosophy, because it may mean different things to different people. On the one hand, there is theosophy as a set of teachings. On the other hand, we can think of theosophy as a blueprint for living in our daily lives. Joy Mills once analysed the original meaning of theosophy, and it wasn't both in the Greek and I think in Sanskrit and said as well. And basically, she said, from both points of view, theosophy is a way of seeing which is constantly growing, and therefore it's not a static thing. It's something that we can grow with, grow into, expand ourselves with. But from another point of view as well, theosophy itself can be regarded as a transcendental state, a state of divine wisdom, a state of being, a very exalted state of being. And we can think of that also as our natural state as human beings too, at our innermost core. It's something which we have to peel the layers off of so that we can get to it, if you like. So in terms of how theosophy has influenced me, well, I guess the teachings are only as good as the extent to which we can really understand them and assimilate them and apply them in daily life. And I have found theosophical teachings tremendously valuable in that respect of helping me to live in a certain way, helping me to inquire, helping my mind not to become too static. I think that another thing too is in terms of the influence of theosophy on my life. When I first started reading theosophical texts, I used to take everything I read at face value and assume it was automatically true. But after some time, I thought I really need to inquire, to go into this, to ask questions, to try to reflect more deeply. And so it's influenced me in that way as well, in terms of trying to become a deeper student, not necessarily a student who remembers a whole lot of things by rote, but a student who can go into something, meditate on it, reflect on it, that sort of thing. And I guess this brings up also the fact that very early, of course, I heard in the Theosophical Society that it's a sensible thing in life to try to have some kind of balance between meditation and study and service. And I always found that that was really useful. So, for example, for over 50 years, I've been meditating on a regular basis. And it does do something to change you. It somehow changes the composition of the bodies, if you like. And there is something that occurs over time. And it can also give a very real sense of balance and stability in life. We live in a rather crazy world. We don't know what's going to be there on the news from day to day. But when you have that kind of stability from a good, sound routine in life, it can make a very big difference. I think my exposure to Theosophy has helped me to understand people better and to learn to accept people from very many walks of life, and to learn not to become judgmental about others. And when one thinks about the tremendously long trajectory of evolution, which is evident in theosophical teachings, I think we can all benefit by learning to be not just tolerant, but accepting of our brothers and sisters with all of our imperfections as well. And another way in which Theosophy has influenced me enormously, really, and this is one of the most fundamental things, is Theosophy itself, divine wisdom, is predicated on unity. On unity, not division, not fragmentation. And therefore the need for unity, to try to live unity, to come to life from a perspective of unity, is incredibly important. I think if more people were able to do that, we might have a somewhat different world to the one that we find around us. So they are some ways in which Theosophy has influenced my life.
Yeah, I totally resonate with how Theosophy gives you a stability amidst the storm, right? It's like a constant that you root yourself in amidst all the changes in life. And paradoxically, like you said, while it is a constant, it is ever changing. And as we live it, we see ourselves evolve as well. And it is also so true for me that it's helped me understand others so much better in that because the common folk is so used to just taking everything at face value, thinking that the appearance is the true self.
Yeah.
But Theosophy has helped me realize that something much deeper, much higher, much subtler, and much more eternal is the true self. And I think that's very life-changing for our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with others, to see that beyond the differences, we are one, and that the unity that underlies all. And so thank you so much. That was very inspiring. And just leading on from that, you have had a very long career in the Theosophical Society, and of course could you tell us about your experience as national president of the TS in Australia and being the international vice president of the Theosophical Society? Did leadership come easily for you, or did you have to find your way into it?
Okay, perhaps I could begin by saying that I absolutely did not want to become the national president of the section. And when I was approached by a senior member to consider standing for that position, it took me 4 long months of thinking about it very carefully before I put my name forward. So it was actually a big thing. I had already done work as the education coordinator for the Theosophical Society in Australia. But anyway, circumstances caused me to, when I sort of did some soul searching, I thought, all right, I will go ahead. So then I was elected to my first term of office. And when karmic circumstances present themselves, one has to learn to adapt. And so I guess in one sense, I had to learn leadership as I went along. I tended to be quite collaborative and used to sometimes conduct surveys of members to get a feel for their thinking about things. And so there was all of that. But it may sound a bit strange, but one of the things that helped me very much in that role was actually being the mother of 3 children. And that is because children can be very different in family. And one needs to learn to coexist with them and to guide them and to provide boundaries where required, but also know when to provide some freedom. One needs to be sympathetic, but also firm when necessary. And this, I think, these are the sorts of qualities that I think were able to help me in terms of taking on that role. The position of a national president is one of great responsibility. There will be challenges. I think virtually every president is challenged on their weakest points. At some point, something comes up to test you along the way. And I'm a person who really does not like conflict, and I don't engage in it. But again and again, I had conflicts to deal with, which had to be resolved in one way or another. So that was very much part of my work. And there was frequent personal inconvenience. It was a 7 days a week thing. It became a way of life, not just a 9-to-5 job, if you like. There was a lot of travel. And I think most national presidents or general secretaries of sections would have a similar story in that regard. It's a big thing to take on. As for the vice presidency, what happened was Mrs. Rada Bernier, who was the international president at the time, invited me and my husband to come to Adyar. She was getting older and she needed more help. And so we went there not knowing what was in store exactly. But then she decided to nominate me for the international vice president. And I found myself in that position. So I had to cut short a term of office as national president here in order to do that. But we decided it felt like the right thing to do. I had visited Adyar quite a few times by that stage already as a member of the Society's General Council. So I had certain familiarity with it. I had an affinity both with India and with Indian people, who I'm generally very fond of, I must say. So as vice president, living and working in India meant being immersed into a very ancient culture, which at the same time was working towards modernization. So it was an interesting experience of contrast in that way. I worked in the wonderful international headquarters building, in an office there, in which letters used to appear in the box, certain communications that it's all been written about in theosophical history. My duties were varied. I would attend meetings of the executive committee there and help the president to plan programs for the international convention. Also there was going to be a World Congress in Rome, so I had to go there on her behalf to have a look at a venue there with some members of the Italian section. We established that the hotel would be suitable, and then after that, I helped her with planning the program for that. I had various other tasks for her, a certain amount of traveling in India. My husband and I traveled for probably thousands of kilometers by train to different parts of India, where we both gave presentations. And I also visited and spoke at some countries in Europe during that time as well. Greece, Slovenia.
Sounds like a very busy life. How did you bal balance it all?
And very interesting also.
When you love something, it's not a chore. I mean, I love the Theosophical Society and I love Theosophy. I don't need anything else aside from the broad arc of what's embraced by Theosophy in my life. I would travel in Australia sometimes. I stayed with one lady in a city and she said to me, "But you know, there are other things out there. Have you tried this or tried that?" And I said, "I don't need anything else. As far as I'm concerned, Theosophy is this vast ocean with vast depth, and it's not something that one can master in one lifetime, either in terms of teachings or as an experience either." So when the energy is there, when the love of it is there, it's not so much a chore.
It's very beautiful. And I think some people among us feel that way. And hopefully, with centuries, the world will be changing towards Theosophy. So, yes, everyone will be discovering this vast ocean that has everything essential in it. And also, I feel that many of us don't like conflicts. We share that somehow, many of us in the theosophical environment. And sometimes we are put in the situation where we have to grow through them somehow. And hopefully for our own benefit and for benefit of others.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it's very interesting, the connection that you show between experience of family life and your theosophical work. I think always we have this, those who work inside the TS have this relation between what we do, like outside in other work, in our jobs, in our family lives, and also in TS. And it's very interesting to see the mutual influence of those factors. And we just finished about 2 months ago, a little less, the annual convention, and it was not just another convention, it was a very big celebration of a very big anniversary, 150 years. So in your experience, in your vision, how was it different from the other conventions in the past?
In one way, it was not so different because it was an international convention. People came from different countries. There was quite a variety of different sessions on the program as well. But from another point of view, 150 years is highly significant for the Theosophical Society. And to be there at that moment, to be a part of that was really special because I think it was our president, Tim Boyd, who mentioned it was like taking a collective pause, something like that, and reflecting on where the society had come from, and even speculating on a new humanity in the future. And I always remember that the society was really set up as an experiment by with the support of Madame Blavatsky's spiritual teachers. It was an experiment. They didn't necessarily think it was going to work, but it has done, and here it is 150 years later. That is extraordinary. I don't know how many organizations in the world have lasted for 150 years. So it is quite unique and special. The other thing I can comment on that 150th convention was there was a happy atmosphere, I think. It felt like a quiet celebration of something extraordinary. So that was something that struck me as well.
And being in the Adyar campus, such a historical and spiritual place, it must have meant a lot more to be there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been the Society's international headquarters since, 1882. And a tremendous atmosphere has built up there. You can visit Adyar and you can feel it. You can take a quiet walk in the estate, and all of a sudden it's as though something comes upon you. There are these moments, they're just quite beautiful. And living and working there can have a similar effect as well. So when I lived there for the 2.5 years I was there for as the vice president, I really felt that very keenly. It was a wonderful thing to be, if you like, working in the master's atmosphere. That's really what it feels like to me, and I think to many people.
That's wonderful. And I imagine that amidst the conflicts that you might have been experiencing, or some of the ups and downs that you were experiencing, it must have been a place that could ground you and make you feel that you could go back to and to always remind yourself of your purpose.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. There's this, I think there's an inner connection there which many people feel. There's something that takes them within themselves to really, I think, contemplate some of the greater mysteries of life, really. It's quite wonderful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I think you probably found something similar at Adyar when you were there.
Oh, for sure. Yes, I think we all have. The atmosphere is amazing. I think it's maybe a big part of it is the accumulation of energies and thoughts and feelings and aspirations of all the great people who were there, all the devoted workers, starting from HPB herself and to modern friends, brothers and sisters who come really with sincere, and even without coming, who think about the Theosophical Society with very sincere motivation. So that all accumulates. So I think it's not possible to be at Adyar and remain the same, because the atmosphere is just so powerful. It changes.
That's it. And it draws many people back for subsequent visits as well. It has that kind of effect. And I often think that, we stand on the shoulders of those who went before us in the Theosophical Society. So if we have an opportunity to give service, let us give our best to it. It's an incredible opportunity in a lifetime to come into contact with this sort of thing, in my view.
Sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I personally think that it's wonderful to be standing on the shoulders of these great beings that have come before us and continually support mankind. And and it makes me just realize how small my problems are. And being an Adyar especially has that effect on me. And speaking of Adyar and the convention, it has been it's over now. The festivities are over, and of course, a whole year is over. In some of your articles and your talks, you have mentioned renewal quite a bit, the idea of renewal. So could you talk about your reflections on the past year and what this new year brings, what it means to shed the old in order to fully embrace the new?
I suppose I can approach this question in two ways. One is in terms of this past year for humanity as a whole. And one of the holy ones said in one of the letters that humanity is the same as it was a million years ago, basically that it's very, very, very slow to change. So from that point of view, moving from an older year into a new year, many of the problems are going to remain. But in a personal sense, I have a very full life in many ways. And that degree of fullness does not vary from year to year. Each year there are challenges. In the last year, a couple of the things that I have done is my continued very deep involvement with the Manor community in Sydney. And we hold various activities there. I co-presented an online course for the Crotonian Institute of Theosophy last year as well, on the subject of the two paths, which is essentially a choice between the exoteric and the esoteric, I guess you could say. Also various family obligations and theosophical commitments. As for the new year, well, a new year always requires a certain amount of planning for all of us, I suppose. It's a time for us personally to pause and maybe think about our own past year and what we might, or we might even make some resolution to change in some positive way in the new year, to do something a bit differently. And that requires a mind which can be determined, which can be receptive to that possibility. The passage of time can be interesting as markers, a set of markers, and we can perhaps use this kind of pause between years as a time to think a little bit and think ahead also. And I guess one thinks very much in terms of cycles as well. There is what is essentially old because it's our past experience now, and what is coming up in front of us. But there's also very much the question of this moment. And I think it's very helpful if we can try to live in this moment, because there is a newness in this moment that is not there when we are remembering all sorts of things from the past, or perhaps anxious about the future or worried or something like that. But it's possible to actually be present in this moment, which in a sense transcends that past and present of a year that's been completed and a new one as well. I think it's very useful to try not to become too enmeshed in our memories. We all have them. But there might be something new in front of us that we might miss otherwise. So that's perhaps a useful thing. In terms of newness as well, I mean, many people have cherished ideas which are very important to them, even perhaps views of particular theosophical teachings that they are this way. But I think if the mind can open up, it might be able to see something in a new and different way. And I think if the mind is open too, then over the years, not just in the next new year, but subsequent years, it's possible to come back to some teaching or some idea and gain even further new perspectives on it as well. So there can be a newness in that, which is really very nice.
And how do you develop this openness of mind, so that the moment is always new, and while we keep this newness of the moment, this eternal now, in view, how do we navigate past and present in our daily routines?
Yeah. I think it's something we have to consciously come back to again and again, because life tends to be busy for most people, and other things take up our thoughts and our minds and all of that. And we live with memories, we live with anticipations and all of that. I think one of the things that can help us to learn to live in this moment, two things come to mind especially. Deeper reflection on things in life, learning to reflect more deeply, whether it be through study or perhaps through meditation. And this can somehow bring itself more into our daily life, because we might find ourselves stepping back a little bit, not being so enmeshed in things. But the other really important thing is the ability to be attentive, to be aware in this moment. And because so many things pull us here and there, we need to be able to come back to this and remind ourselves of this moment. And I always think that each moment has its own joy as well, but we can miss it. There at the very base of a moment is this eternal joy. So it's not something that necessarily happens easily, but it does require conscious attention, reminders to ourselves, perhaps throughout the day, to give attention to this moment.
And how does meditation play a part in that, from your own experience?
Well, in, I guess, classic meditation, one focuses on an idea or a thought and just sits with that. Concentration is one of the stages in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And if we sit with something, simply attend to it, concentrate on it to the exclusion of all else. And it can't be done all the time necessarily, but that's something which is very helpful. Then a slightly miraculous thing can happen, and one can go more deeply into that. And then there is what's described as a flow to and from an object. One is in harmony, in flow with that object. And then eventually, in deeper meditation still, that sense of separation just dissolves, and one is in this extraordinary moment. So meditation, and it's not something that can necessarily be mastered just like that. In fact, it's good not to even go into meditation with any goal, because it would be easy to be disappointed. But just learn to sit still, find something that's really meaningful, some idea, some quality, and just sit with it. It can be very energizing too.
And that's a wrap for the first episode of our interview with Linda Oliveira. She's inspired us with her life experiences that are full of wisdom, keen inquiry, and compassion. Stay tuned for part 2, where she goes deeper into what it means to be selfless on the spiritual path. Till next time.